Drew Football Club on YouTube.
The shirts, the hair, the names. It can only mean one thing, and that is the early years of Major League Soccer. MLS started in 1996, bringing professional club soccer back to the United States. Now, the country hadn't seen professional soccer since the dying days of the North American Soccer League in the 1980s. For me, growing up in the US, born in the early 80s, I had never seen professional soccer until I saw the 1994 World Cup. And then, following on from that, MLS. Those were the first times I had seen professional soccer. So there was a huge hole in the market in the United States. Now, although soccer was still around in the States, playing at an amateur level, it wasn't easy to find. Now, until MLS arrived, then we got to see more and more soccer in the United States growing up in the 1990s. Now, of course, it still wasn't great and accessible to see MLS every week, but it was a step in the right direction. MLS is now in its 29th season and has a ridiculous 29 teams, and it is still growing across the United States and into Canada. But for this video, I want to go back to those halcyon days of MLS and look back at the first 10 MLS Cup champions from 1996 to 2005. Now, this is a long forgotten time in MLS and a time in which there were only a handful of teams in the league and very few fans in the stands. Indeed, the league nearly went out of business during this time, long before the days of Beckham, Henry, and Messi, and long before a lot of the current fans were bored or watching the product. So let's look back at the champions, the unforgettable moments, and the players who made it all happen. Let's get started. MLS Cup's inaugural season in 1996 saw DC United lift the trophy. In a dramatic final against the LA Galaxy, DC United came from behind to win 3-2 in overtime thanks to Eddie Pope's decisive golden goal. Back when golden goals were a thing in soccer, and I can tell you what, I would love to see more golden goals in extra time. I would love to see golden goals brought back and used in extra time these days. Now, this game was played in a monsoon that DC United were able to win in the end. 1 year later, in 1997, DC United did it again against the Colorado Rapids with a 2-1 victory. Jaime Moreno and Tony Sene were the heroes of the day for DC United, making it 2 MLS Cup wins in a row. In 1998, it was the Chicago Fire's year as they burst onto the scene in the league. This was their expansion season, and they claimed the MLS Cup in that campaign. The Fire defeated DC United 2-0 with goals from Podbrodsny and Diego Gutierrez, making an instant mark on MLS. Now, unfortunately, the Fire are far from the team they were at the end of the 90s and in the early 2000s right now. Despite having players like Xherdan Shaqiri, the Chicago Fire are one of those early MLS teams that are struggling compared to some of the newer teams in the league in MLS. In 1999, as the 90s ended, DC United returned to the top of the league, winning its third MLS Cup in 4 years. They overcame the LA Galaxy once more with a 2-0 victory, showcasing their dominance in the league in the early season, and DC United were MLS's first dynasty club. Now, DC United have fallen on hard times since this time, much like the Chicago Fire, and struggle now to relive those moments in MLS. The 2000s kicked off with the Kansas City Wizards, now Sporting Kansas City, clinching their first MLS Cup title. In a tightly contested match, they edged out the Chicago Fire 1-0 with Miklos Molnar scoring the only goal of the game. Fantastic season for the Kansas City Wizards and my home state team. In 2001, the San Jose Earthquakes emerged as champions in MLS, defeating the LA Galaxy 2-1 in overtime. This was the third time the Galaxy had lost an MLS Cup final. Dwayne De Rosario scored the golden goal, securing the Earthquakes' first title. And again, we saw another golden goal win in MLS Cup. In 2002, the Galaxy finally broke their drought in the MLS Cup, winning 1-0 against the New England Revolution, with Carlos Ruiz being the hero, scoring the golden goal in overtime. Now, this was a fantastic year for MLS, as it had a lot of great attendances, especially for that final of the MLS Cup. And this was a time when MLS really were boosted by the US men's national team, who had a fantastic 2002 World Cup in South Korea. Now, unfortunately, MLS struggled past the 2002 year, to really build on those attendances, and it hit a bit of a lull until a man named Beckham came along a few years later. In 2003, the San Jose Earthquakes captured a second MLS Cup title, defeating the Chicago Fire 4-2, and this was the year Landon Donovan stepped out onto the main stage and had a fantastic performance in the final with 2 goals. And this was when Donovan began to become Mr. Soccer in the USA for the 2000s, as the Earthquakes secured a second MLS Cup title. Now, this was shortly before the Earthquakes relocated to Houston and rebranded as the Houston Dynamo. In 2004, DC United returned to glory, winning their 4th MLS Cup title. They defeated the Kansas City Wizards 3-2 in this one, with Aleko Eskandarian scoring twice, earning the MVP honors. And finally, in 2005, the LA Galaxy secured a second MLS Cup title as they defeated the New England Revolution. Now, the Revolution would go through the 2000s, losing several MLS Cup finals and earning a reputation as a team that was always the bridesmaids. Guillermo Ramirez scored the match's only goal in extra time, making it a memorable finish for the Galaxy as they lifted their second trophy. And despite only winning 2 trophies in that first 10 seasons, the Galaxy were a bit of a dynasty themselves, making it to multiple MLS Cup finals. So there you have it, guys, a decade of MLS Cup finals, 1996 to 2005. Games filled with lots of unforgettable memories as MLS carved out that first decade of the league. So which team and match was your favorite? Let me know down in the comments below if you were around back then like myself to watch MLS and watch those MLS Cup finals. Let me know what your favorite final was or who your favorite MLS team is down in the comments below. And I will see you guys next time when we cover the next 10 MLS Cup finals. We'll see you soon, guys.